You are replaceable. Don't ever think you are not. You are replaceable in this world. It's not personal. You have to keep repeating yourself. It's not personal. It's not about me. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's not personal.
The sublime, very simply, is an experience that takes you outside that circle.
From my work, essentially, I'm trying to get you to think of making yourself self-reliant, where it all depends on you. So, you have two ways you can go in life. In my Laws of Human Nature, I talk about your attitude towards the world, whether it's negative and closed and kind of retreating, or whether it's open and excited and advancing. And so the point I'm trying to get everyone to understand is stop complaining, stop blaming the world, stop blaming this person or that force or that thing going on in society, and look at yourself and look at how you are responsible to some degree for what happens to you. Now, of course, there are things we cannot control. We can't control that our industry is completely wiped out because of progress, technological progress, such as happening in AI. So you're going to be suffering. There's going to be inevitable pain. As you pointed out, some of that pain comes from people. People can be pretty awful. Sometimes there are difficult people all around you, manipulative people who are very egotistical or out for their own agenda. Okay, that's one element. Then it's painful, all the changes that are going on in the world and keeping up with it. And it's extremely difficult to be successful in this world. There's so many forces against you. It is so competitive. I look at the world that my father grew up in, or I grew up with him 70, 60, 50 years ago. And, he had one job that he had throughout his whole life. And he had kind of a secure world that he lived in. I came from the middle class. He was able to buy a home. I had a decent childhood because of that. And that world is completely gone now. There's so much more insecurity. There's so much more competition. Nobody stays at one job for that long. Your boss no longer takes care of you as they used to take care of people, right? You're on your own, right? And you can either get all upset and turn inward and complain and worry and get insecure. And what happens when you do that is you're just making life more difficult, right? So if your attitude is, I'm only alive once, life is like a kind of adventure, I have to go out and be excited and make the best of everything that happens, and I have to be opportunistic. So opportunities will be coming your way. If you have that attitude where you're excited, you're open, and you're looking, things will happen to you. So I guess the main thing in my books is you have some power, but it has to come from within. No one's going to give you anything in this world. Young people are so much more anxious and worried than when I was growing up, because there doesn't seem to be much future, much hope right now. The world looks like everything's sort of against them, So everything sort of looks like, I don't have much hope. I don't know what to grab onto. I go and I learn some solid career like coding or whatever, software, making that. And now all of a sudden that job is evaporated. And positions are now going to be evaporating in finance, in real estate, all throughout because of AI. So you're looking at a landscape that is chaotic, that is difficult, that makes you feel like you have no power and no control. And I can understand that very well. If there's anything that makes me different, it's because I didn't have success until my late 30s and even my early 40s. I went through a long period of 20 years where I couldn't figure out my career. And I felt that anxiety and I felt that powerlessness. I couldn't figure out what I was meant to do. And I tried this job, that job, and other jobs. I never had one job for more than 11 months in my entire life, right? I just moved here and there. I couldn't find my niche. I had depression. I even felt suicidal. So I understand very, very deeply from within that sense of not having power or control over your fate. I also had some really, really terrible bosses. And so I know the pain of having to work for others. So that is kind of where the 48 Laws of Power came out of. My own powerlessness, looking at people in the world that I saw who were kind of controlling the game. What are the laws that they were using? And so I want to empower, I want to give you the feeling that so much you cannot control, but what you can control is your own psychology, your own mindset. You have to go into battle. This world is like battle. There's conflict everywhere. There's so much competition. You have to have a tough warrior type mindset and resilience about you. I make the point in the Laws of Human Nature that all of us are to some degree narcissists, that we should stop judging and thinking, well, that person is a narcissist, but I'm not. I'm so noble, I'm so saintly. The person who says that, who says, I'm not a narcissist, I'm so noble, I'm not like that, is actually a great narcissist because they think so highly of themselves. They think they're so different from anybody else, but they're not different. We are all self-absorbed to some degree or other, right? You know, we're interested, if we hear our name in a crowd, our eyes light up. Oh, they're talking about me. We all have that reaction. Get over your high-minded thinking that you're different. We all have that reaction, right? We want attention. We want recognition, okay? But some people are what I call deep narcissists, right? Most of us are self-absorbed, but at moments in life we can get out of it and we can show genuine interest in other people, in their story, in their lives, and what's happening to them. But there's a lot of people who can never get out to that point. They're so insecure. There's a reason why there are deep narcissists, and I explain why in that book. But so it's understandable. They had probably a very tough childhood in some ways. But they can't get out of their own self. They're so deeply enmeshed, they're so insecure that everything is about themselves. Every little thing that happens triggers their insecurities, right? And they're very dangerous people to be around. The one thing you have to know is you got to develop, it's a skill you have to develop. It's a life skill you have to develop, is it's not personal. You have to keep repeating yourself. It's not personal. It's not about me. It's not personal. It's not personal. It's not personal. Over and over and over and over again. And when you say it's not personal, it's not personal, it's not personal, it's not personal, you're pushing them a little bit outside of your head. You can start looking at them instead of thinking about them all the time. The next thing you have to do is manipulative people. And the reason I can talk so much about this is because I've had so much experience dealing with these people. The next thing you must go through is their whole game is drama. They are trying to play on your emotions to get you upset. And that can be getting you excited and then getting you insecure and doubting yourself. Up and down. They're trying to constantly manipulate you. If they can push your buttons and control you that way, then they're the ones that have power, right? So manipulative, narcissistic people are always creating drama around themselves. And you're going to be caught up in it, right? And so the main thing you have to do is not react. Not react. You can say something in response, but inwardly you are not reacting. You are cool, you are calm, you're saying, it's not personal, it's not about me, it's about them, right? Going through the whole script that I've just mentioned, I am not going to react. If you can do that and you can create some distance, then you can deal with people like that, right? And the problem is they like to push your buttons. They like to make you upset and emotional. And when you don't react, it can also make them even like try doubly hard to push your buttons, etc. But the power lies within you. Well, you could see like almost every law in that way. But There is one law, I can't remember the number, it's like around 11 or 12. It's about create dependence. It's like making people dependent on you. And so what's happening in the world today is, particularly now with AI, but what's happening before AI, is you are replaceable. Don't ever think you are not. You are replaceable in this world, right? At some point in your career, maybe as you approach the age of 30, there's now somebody coming up, 23, 24, 25, who can do your job for less money, who won't complain as much, who doesn't feel entitled to anything. You're gone. They're going to replace you, right? Okay? So you have to have the skill set, the position somewhere where you cannot be replaced. If there is only one you, if you're the only one that can really do this, if you're so original, if you're unique, you can't be replaced. People depend on you. You don't depend on them for your job. They depend on you. I was talking the other day to a high-powered lawyer, and he was saying that the legal profession is going to be decimated by AI. He's calling it AI justice, where anybody in any corner of the world can get valuable advice, legal advice online that is better than what even a good, experienced lawyer can give you for free. And you can take that advice and you can write a contract, you can go to court with it, it's operational, you can work with it. Forget it, law schools are going to be decimated by this, right? So he said you're going to have to be the kind of lawyer that can now help people navigate that AI world and make them and exploit it and use it to great effect. In other words, you have to ride the wave. You can't try and stop it. Okay? And so he was painting a scenario where he as a lawyer can be kind of replaceable. I'm not explaining it perfectly because I don't remember everything he said. But I could see him painting a scenario where he would be in a position to still maintain his career within this vast shift that's going on. It's going to get harder for people, but there are things that AI cannot do, and you have to incorporate that into your skill set. There's certain human empathic skills of psychology, of understanding people that's not virtual, and being human, or certain things that are creative in the arts, or what in any field that AI can't reach. And in any field, you have to go find what those are, and you have to lean into it, and you have to develop those skills. But making yourself irreplaceable, creating dependence for 2026, 2027, that's the most important law by far.
I've kind of put a new spin on the concept of the sublime, or at least something that's a little bit more about who I am and a little bit more unique to me. But the way I like to envision it is human experience always involves a limit. I like to use the metaphor of a circle. And within that circle, there are codes and conventions that we humans are supposed to live by, that govern our behavior, that even govern how we think. And so those codes and conventions might change. They're not the same as they were in ancient Egypt, but they're always there. There's always a limiting factor because that's how we live in a social environment, right? We can't do or say anything. So there's always these conventions that limit our experience. Sometimes that circle can get very narrow depending on the culture, which I believe we're living in a cultural moment where that circle is decreasing by the minute, largely from technology and social media. But it can also be personal. It can also be you yourself get very tight and you're very into your habits and you get very rigid and things have to be done a certain way. And the sublime, very simply, is an experience that takes you outside that circle. When I wrote about it in Human Nature, I was trying to tell you that our concept of death is abstract, particularly right now in our cultural moment, where you can go years without ever seeing physically death. It has no visceral presence.
Right.
Whereas 200 years ago, the food that you eat, you're seeing chickens being cut up, you're seeing animals dying in front of you, you're seeing your family die in your home. Death had a physical presence, which we have lost. It's like a cartoon that you see a Tarantino movie and 18 people are being gunned down in 5 seconds. It's like a cartoon. It has no reality. We have no physical connection to death. I wrote that. But the irony is that it was still abstract to me. I'm still,
Right.
it's still a concept that I'm writing about. And now it is not a concept. So when I was in my coma, so right before some strange thoughts are starting to occur to me, my wife is like trying to get me out to stop the car I was driving at the time I had my stroke. Strange things are going on in my brain as things are kind of melting. And then I wake up after my coma and I had the sensation as if my bones were dissolving, as if I was getting softer inside, right? Like almost like you're in a graveyard and your body's dissolving into the ground and the worms are starting to eat you. And and then I had like a kind of strange taste in my mouth. And there were things that I can't really experience. I can't really verbalize, I'm sorry. And so it made it much more real, much different than the kind of abstract concept, the intellectual concept of writing about it. And so, I could write beforehand about how death makes you aware of how ephemeral life is and makes you appreciate everything around you. But once again, it was an intellectual concept. Now it's a very physical feeling. So when I look out the window, I know how close I came and how that wouldn't be here right now. I would be dead. I would be underground. The worms would be eating me. So it's a whole different relationship. It's not intellectual.